How to register your name properly on a document. A lot of women, a lot of ladies, a lot of men have been doing this, have been registering, have been writing down their names wrongly on a document. So in today's video, I'll be telling you, if not teaching you, how to write your name or how to register your name properly on a document. If this is the kind of video that you really want to watch, stick around. Okay, you are a married lady, or you have someone you want to acquire, or you want to buy a property together, and your names must be on that document. Both of you, your names must be registered or written in that document. Some of us might have been doing it the wrong way, but in today's video I would like to tell you how to properly write it on the document. For example, you want to buy a piece of land. Your husband and wife want to buy a piece of land. Writing or registering Mr. and Mrs. Desmond. It's a very wrong way. It is a very wrong move, okay? Mr. and Mrs. Desmond. Desmond is your husband's name, so your name is not even written on that document. The only thing, or the only way you are being addressed, is the Mrs. without anything. So writing Mr. and Mrs. Desmond on that document, I think, from my home point of view, I think it's really wrong. Okay, and some will write their last name. What I mean by last name is their surname, maybe your husband's name. When you are legally married to your husband, automatically you start bearing, or you start bearing your husband's last name. So your name is, for example, your name is Glory. Your husband's name is Desmond. And your husband's last name is Alexander. Okay? Your name is Glory. Your husband's name is Desmond. And your husband's surname, his last name is Alexander. So your husband's name is Desmond Alexander. And your name is Glory. Maybe when you were not married to your husband, your maiden name is Glory Williams. And your husband's name is Desmond Alexander. Your husband is not going to change his surname for you. You will be the one to change your own last name to your husband's name. So you can no longer bear Glory Williams. You just have to bear Glory Alexander. So if you want to register it properly on a document, you need to write Mr. Desmond and Mrs. Glory Alexander. Not Mr. and Mrs. Desmond Alexander. Not Mr. and Mrs. Alexander. It should be Mr. Desmond and Mrs. Glory Alexander. Of course, you should have an official you should have, what do I put it? You should have a newspaper. In Nigeria, we have a newspaper change of name. When you get married and you want to start bearing your husband's last name, you need to announce to the world. It needs to be published in a newspaper. A lot of ladies, a lot of women, a lot of married women have lost their properties just because of these simple and silly mistakes. No, I don't think I should call it silly mistakes, because some are not even aware. You are not even aware. Some men, maybe due to the death of the husband, some families will just come over and take over the properties of the man. And in some situations, the woman, the bride, the wife can be the breadwinner of the family. But because your name is not properly registered, even if you take it to court, but because your name is not properly registered on that document, you don't have a case. Yes. But when you register your name properly on that document, you have a case. And let's not, apart from the death of the man, the death of the husband, in some situations when the husband have another wife, like a second wife, and the name or the properties is Mr. and Mrs. Desmond Alexander or Mr. and Mrs. Desmond or Mr. and Mrs. Alexander. In situations like that, Mr. and Mrs. Alexander, your husband's second wife can be Mrs. Alexander. Okay? Anybody can be Mrs. Alexander. Do you get me? Anybody can be Mrs. Alexander. But when it is boldly written on the document that Mr. and Mrs. Glory Alexander, with that, no argument. Okay, you are on the right track when you do that. So please don't make this mistake. I know some will ask me in the comment section that, oh, Glory, what if the husband's second wife name is also Glory? It do happens in some case, right? For example, maybe your husband have 2 wives. You are Glory. Your husband's second wife name is also Glory. What should happen in that case? In that kind of scenario, what should really happen? If you really want to do this permanently, I think apart from your maiden name, apart from some ladies even bear their maiden name. Even after getting married, they bear their maiden name. So, for example, when I said you are Williams Glory and you get married to Desmond Alexander, you can as well add your father's name, your maiden name, with your husband's name. So, when you want to register it, you can, for safety, for maximum safety, 100% safety, you can just write Mr. and Mrs. Glory Williams. So, your husband will be the one to add his surname, his last name to it as Alexander. That is if your husband agreed to that. But in a common scenario, you just have to write your name. Let your name be there, not just Mr. and Mrs. Alexander. Are we clear? Thank you. If you have any question regarding this video, or you have any suggestion regarding this video, or you're a lawyer, or you have an experience with this, please let me know in the comment section. Please, what are your thoughts on this? Please express yourself. Feel free to express yourself in the comment section, because I will read those comments and I would love to reply them. Thank you.